Hello, and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am not sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my Armor of God t-shirt on. I have no movie right next to me because, judging by the frame around me, we are back, taking down another atheist. Today, back on the chopping block, is Dr. Joel Duff and his video, Extreme Family Planning, Why There Were No Children on the Ark. Well, last time we discussed this video, this gentleman had a very skewed view of the young earth creation story, and he kind of let it slip that he believes in long periods of time. And if you saw that on my feed over here, and this is only because I've been watching this video on YouTube, and then last night at about 2 a.m., which, because I normally live in Washington, it's about midnight because my computer hasn't fully gone over to the thing, because you can see here that it says 9:31 when it's actually 11:30. You can see that it says defining creation as kinds, clarity, or confusion, and you can see under here it says a biologist's critique. And so he kind of let it slip that he's an atheist, he's a biologist, and in this last clip he kind of let it slip that he is believing in an old earth, which is part of the reason why he cannot believe that there was a global flood, because that doesn't fit with their narrative of billions, millions, and billions of years. Okay? And so, because he's like, well, there couldn't have just been like 8 people. Well, yes, there could have been, okay? Because we know that there have been genetic bottlenecks in the population. And it's kind of funny that even biologists now will acknowledge that there was people who are, for instance, that there were 2 people that kind of gave birth to the whole of the human race, called mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam. Okay? Funny that biologists will use Adam and Eve, names picked directly from this text, to say something that young earth creationists have been saying for a very long time. And that is that the human race descended from 2 human beings, that name being Adam and Eve. And so instead of like picking different names for their mitochondrial Susan and their Y chromosomal Mark, they pick mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam. You know, almost like there are people out there that want to believe in this, but they're so stuck in evolution that they can't believe in it because it just doesn't make sense with the billions of years. Duh. In fact, just yesterday, I was meeting with my girlfriend's sister and brother-in-law for dinner. We were just hanging out and having a great time. And she was saying that they're trying to find a new church because their pastor has been getting wishy-washy, and also stood up at the pulpit last Sunday and said that evolution was a thing. Now, I'm not talking about the parts of the theory that we can actually prove, like speciation, adaptation, natural selection. I'm talking about macroevolution in a biblical sense, which I've debunked numerous times on my channel here. Okay? And I get so sick and tired of people trying to eisegete the Bible and trying to eisegete evolution into the Bible. Folks, the theory of evolution cannot be biblical because it's heretical. If, for some odd reason, a retarded God decided that he was going to use the theory of evolution to create, he is cruel, wasteful, and retarded, and he is not a God worth worshiping. And I don't have a problem saying that. Okay? because he's using blind processes and death to create life. That doesn't work, folks. Ever. Okay? So, get that out of your head. It doesn't work. And it's also heretical. That was Moogie, by the way. It was also heretical. Okay? Because you have death before sin. You cannot have death before sin because that is a heresy. Do you understand what a heresy is? Okay? A heresy is a belief that is not written in the text. Okay? In fact, I would go out on a limb and say that for most Muslims, when they say that, like, this is corrupted, okay? When they say that this is corrupted, that's heretical. Because their own text says that it's not. That we have to judge by the scriptures that go before. Islam is judging by the Quran. Christians are judging by the Injil or the Gospel. And Jews judge by the Torah or the law. Okay? And so for them to go, yeah, but, your stuff is corrupted, is absolute crap. Okay? Because it's not true. Now, the only reason I say this is because when I look into these scriptures, you cannot show me one instance where God used evolution, quote unquote, to create anything. It's not in the first 6 days. And here again, when I was doing the debunk on, or I will be doing a debunk on Reformed Zoomer's video. Okay, that was on a Messenger of Truth channel, and I downloaded it, and I kind of went through, and I'm not sure if I've started that one or not because I haven't done an audit on my channel in a while, and I'm not sure exactly what I've uploaded and what I haven't. I'm pretty sure I've done the first video on it, but again, I'm not going to sit here and try to go through everything. But my biggest issue is that when I see this kind of stuff, I sit there and go, I don't get it. Okay, this doesn't make any sense because what you're saying is not truthful. Okay. And it's the same thing with this guy. This guy does not understand that we as Christians, okay, when we're doing what he calls a hyper-literal reading of the Bible, we just call it taking the Bible literally. Okay, it's not hyper-literal, okay? It's literal reading because that's what exegesis is. And since this guy has no idea what exegesis versus eisegesis is, he has no idea what's going on.
Right. Young Christians often try to employ, like when they had long ages, right? They would have had a lot of kids. A lot of kids means that, they would have been able to create larger populations really fast. Well, if that's the case, well, here is evidence that in fact didn't happen.
Well, what would be the reason for that? Okay, let's examine the logical reason for why Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth didn't have any other kids until post-flood a year later. Anyone? Bueller? The flood! Is that supposed to be mind-blowing? Is that supposed to be a mic drop moment? Maybe. I mean, come on, dude. Think about it, my man. Okay? Why would they not have had a gigantic family? Okay? Probably the same reason that they were only taking certain amounts of people on the ark. Certain amounts of animals and people on the ark. Space, food. If you had 8 people on the ark taking care of all those, yes, could you take care of all the animals on the ark with more people? Sure. But now you're talking you have to have more food, which means you have to have a larger boat. Okay? So why would you do that? If these guys grew up knowing that God was going to destroy the earth, They would know that they would not want to have kids until they were at least A, on the ark, and B, the ark was almost ready to be opened after the flood. Okay? That would be the only reason. Okay? And again, in chapter 10, we're shown that Shem had a bunch of kids. Okay? And in chapter 11, starting in like verse 12 or 13, it starts to go, okay, on the genealogy that's important to the Jewish line of the Messiah. Okay? Because remember, Deuteronomy, because again, tell me you've never read the Bible without telling me you've never read the Bible. Deuteronomy tells us that a prophet will arise from, in the future, and he will be greater than Moses. Who was that prophet? Jesus. Okay? Now, Moses uses the word prophet. Other places call him the Messiah. Okay? In the Greek is Christ. Okay? Christo. Okay? Was the Greek word for Messiah. So, again, this guy has no idea, okay, how things work like that.
That having kids was well, in the case of Noah, rare.
No, I don't think it was rare at all. I think that he had his 3 children. He was probably planning on having more when God came to him and said, "Don't do that, Noah. I'm going to destroy the earth. And I'm going to save you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives." And Noah was like, "Okay, so what do you want me to do then?" And God's probably like, "Okay, you wait till after I destroy the earth with a flood, and I save you and your family, and then you guys can have all the sex you want, and you can procreate, and you can replenish the earth." And Moses is thinking, okay, let's do that.
Say, well, he was preoccupied with building the ark. But
I said that yesterday. I literally said that in the previous section when I filmed yesterday. Okay? I literally said that. Okay? He and his sons and everybody would have been preoccupied building the boat. However long that would have taken back then with the amount of materials and things that they would have needed for all of that. And then populating it with all of the animals that God was bringing in. Okay? And storing all of the food and doing all of the stuff. That would have taken time. I mean, this guy acts like he could build a boat in a day. I'd like to see this guy build a boat in a day. So that he could go out and have sex for 100 years. I mean, seriously. I mean, build a boat with your bare freaking hands. I saw a guy, okay, literally go out into the woods with like 2 or 3 cameras, okay, and just himself, okay. My dad would watch this show where it was literally a guy who was building a cabin by himself with his bare hands, and it took him like 5 to 10 years to build himself like a 2-room cabin with a little kitchen, with a little bedroom, a little bathroom, a little place over here, a little place over there, okay? It took him a long time because he was basically building it with hand tools and no metal bits. He wanted everything to be wood. He wanted to show people that you could build something with your bare hands and not have to use nails and everything else. You could just build things. And the guy literally like cut out all the notches. He basically made it like Lincoln Logs, okay? But he had to carry every single tree to the campsite. He had to cut it up. He had to reposition his cameras. He had to cut things up. He had to notch things out. I mean, the guy was out there building that house for, like literal years. I mean, I think it took like 10 or 15 years to build this small house. So you can imagine if that's one man building a house and it took him 15 years of basically working from sunup to sundown, how long would it take Noah and his children to build a boat that's 530 feet long, okay, and 21 inches by, 30 cubits high, okay? I mean, like, we're talking, come on, guys, we're talking a gigantic boat here. It's not the size of the Titanic, but it's gigantic compared to, like, most sailing boats, okay? It wasn't made to sail, it was just made to float, but that was the point, okay? I mean, I don't know what it takes to pound it through the thick head of these absolute, just thick atheists who cannot fathom, like, 4 people building a boat, that they would have time at the end of the day when they're super exhausted from carrying the logs over, cutting them up, putting them in place, you know, covering them in pitch, doing all this stuff. Oh, they're just going to go right back and have sex. Yeah, right. I mean, we have couples today that go out and work, like, you know, 60 to 80 hour work weeks, and they don't come home and just immediately go, hey, let's have sex. They come home and they're like, maybe on the weekend when I'm not so blasted, maybe we can have some sex then. And the other person's going, yeah, dude, this sucks. They're not having sex because they're too tired. I mean, it's called common sense. This is something that is completely lacking in every single atheist on the planet, the world over. And I am not exaggerating. I am not using hyperbole, and it's not a generalization fallacy when I say that. Because all y'all do it. All of you do it. You all lack the basic common frickin' sense of being able to read a story and think, can it logically work? You just read it and go, that's idiotic. I don't understand how that could work. And then you go on and you make a video like this where you sit there and you try to make just absolutely brain dead arguments using your logic today as to why something couldn't work, you know, 3,500 years ago. Instead of sitting there and thinking, what could possibly be the reason for this story to work? Why are there 200 flood myths? Why do Native Americans in the middle of the Sonora Desert in Arizona have a flood myth about the world drowning? And it's not because, oh, this Rio Grande over here might flood once a century. That's idiotic. That is absolutely idiotic. People in the Polynesian Islands, okay, that have flood myths, literal myths of the world flooding and a man on a boat saving animals and his family. How? China having genealogy lists that go back to Noah, whom they call Fuhai. Okay? And don't tell me it all came from the Epic of Gilgamesh, because the Asians didn't know about the Epic of Gilgamesh. Because that was after the Tower of Babel, you morons. It was after all of the people were scattered and their languages were confused. They would have had to have carried that story with them. That's the point. And as that culture develops over time, the story kind of metastasizes into their thing, and they don't have the capacity to continue that oral tradition because they have their own oral traditions, and they just blend that story into their oral traditions. And it's so funny to me that people will say that Moses got the story from the Sumerians and the Epic of Gilgamesh, when the Jews had the story orally from the beginning. They were telling that story around the campfire for years before the Sumerians ever wrote down the Epic of Gilgamesh. So how in the hell can you sit there and say that that story doesn't work? And that it's a plagiarism? No, the Sumerians plagiarized it from the Bible. Because they got it from the Jews. They got it from the fact that their descendants of Ham and Japheth. Are you stupid? That's the freaking point. Okay, that all of these legends, all of these flood legends, only show up after the flood. Which means that it had to have happened for all of these cultures all over the world to have the freaking story. And look, I'm not going to sit there and pretend that every single flood legend is exactly the same and it's just a typewriter copy of everything that's in the Bible. But there are a lot of similarities in a lot of the stories, okay? And you can put it out in a chart and you can put down all the events that happened and you can put down all the cultures and you can literally put it down in a little dot thing, okay? And I did this on my Truth Hurts video, okay, debunk. And you can put all that stuff down and then basically it just kind of goes in and does this. And you can just sit there and you can look and you can see how many of those, okay, absolutely do line up. And the funniest thing to me is that you cannot sit there and look at that and go, then maybe it's plausible that there was a global flood at one time. But the problem is that because of uniformitarianism and this notion of an old earth, okay, all these people sit there and go, it kind of happened. There's, because it would have to have covered Mount Everest. Mount Everest wasn't there. And rock, solid rock, cannot bend. It breaks. And we don't see that until way later in the geological record in terms of the actual folding that is going on in the Himalayas. Okay? Because again, I've actually studied geology. Most of these kind of people have not studied geology. Okay? Now, I'm not sitting there and claiming I'm the world's foremost expert on geology. Don't think I am. But what I'm saying is that if you haven't studied geology, don't presume to know that you can predict exactly what's going to happen in geology if you've never actually studied geology. Because then you can't say anything. You can't. You can't come out and say, well, but you don't know. Yes, I do. Because I've studied it. Again, I'm not the world's foremost expert on it. Okay? But I've studied folds, faults. I've studied how mountains are formed. I've studied all of that stuff. And there's a lot that doesn't add up. Okay? Because when you look at folds and faults, okay, faults happen after the folding. Because it's an actual break in the rock. Okay? Because shear rock shears. Okay? Rock does not. It breaks, it shatters, it shears. It does not bend. So to sit there and think that these layers could be billions of years old and bend somehow is absolutely asinine. Okay? And I dare you, go bend a rock. Won't happen. Okay?
But he was 500 years old before he was instructed to build an ark.
No, it was after he fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth that he was told by God. We are not told exactly when. Okay? That is a misnomer. Here again, that is eisegesis. He is trying to say, well, he was 500 when he was told. We don't know when he was told. We just know that it was after Shem, Ham, and Japheth were born, sometime between the fathering of Shem, Ham, and Japheth at 500, okay, and 600 when the flood started. We don't know. We can surmise how long it may have taken him, okay, and I did that in the last video. But to stand there and say, to make the absolute claim that, oh, well, God told him at 500. No, he didn't. Because chapter 6 does not say. Okay? Chapter 6 just says, now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he is also flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Now, then, this is verse 5, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry he had made man on earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animals to creeping things and to birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And then it talks about the records. It says, these are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them, and behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with brooms, and it shall have a covering inside out in pitch. So it doesn't say when exactly he told him that. He just says man's thoughts were only evil continually, and God was distressed that he had made man, and so he decided to destroy man. That's all it. And then he goes, but Noah found favor in the eyes of God, and he said, go build an ark. That's all we're told, son. And it was sometime between 500, when he had Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and 600, when the floodwaters came on the earth. Now again, I'm not saying that Noah built a boat in a year, or in a day. I'm saying it probably took him a while. Most people, including the Ark Encounter, will tell you that it probably took Noah, if he was building it with himself and his 3 sons, it probably took him around about 30 to 50 years. That's what they say. Now, I'm just quoting what they say, and they will say the same thing that I'm about to say. We just don't know. You know why? This doesn't say. Okay? Because again, it's not important. Okay? Just like it wasn't important to know what David named his son that died when he had the adultery with Bathsheba. Okay? Because that was the punishment for his sin. We don't need to know the child's name. We just know that Bathsheba bore David a son, and that son lived for 7 days and then died. Okay? Now, David prayed and fasted for those 7 days and was kind of like, praying to the Lord, don't kill this child. But the Lord had already made it that way. And then he finally says to David, okay, you will bear a son with this woman, okay? Because I'm punishing you for the sins that you committed, okay? But at the same time, you will have a son, and that son will rule, and through him will come the Messiah, okay? So he took a bad thing that David did and turned it into a good thing, because Jesus came through that line, and that's the point. Okay? And so when we see this whole thing, we don't know how long Noah took to build the ark. He could have started it right after Shem, Ham, and Japheth were born, if he was going to leave his wife in charge of the 3 children, okay, while he was out every day building this boat. I doubt that's how it happened, okay? Most likely because God would have known that Noah would have needed help. And there have been a lot of other Christians, Kent Hovind, Ken Ham has talked on this topic a lot, David Rives has talked on this topic a lot, okay? There have been other Christians who have talked about the story of Noah's Ark, and some of them have posited that, maybe Noah was the best shipbuilder of his time. Maybe Noah knew how to build a boat. Maybe Noah didn't know how to build a boat. Maybe Noah contracted a whole bunch of people to build the boat with him and just didn't tell them what he was building it for, just there's that whole thing. And so we don't know, because the Bible doesn't tell us. It just tells us how big the boat was supposed to be. and what he was supposed to fill it with. And that's it. Okay? And then we were told that it was for him, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 sons' wives. That's it. That's all we're told.
And at that point had only had 3 children.
Yeah.
And again, reading genealogies, it's pretty obvious that there were other children, just like with Adam and Eve.
Yes. Up until you get to Noah. And again, why would you need extra children on a giant voyage, not a voyage, but a giant ship that's going to be floating up and down for a year, that's going to take extra food, okay? Why would you do that? Like I said, if you've ever been on a cruise with children, okay, especially small children, you'll know. Because, I mean, on the cruise that I went on back in 2018 with my parents, yeah, they, like I said yesterday, they were not having fun. These people were absolutely just, really? Because their kids were running all over the boat. Yeah, I mean, I almost got knocked over a couple of times by the kids because their parents couldn't control them. That's not what you want on a long voyage. And that was for 7 days. Can you imagine a year, 365 days? I couldn't imagine. I mean, during COVID, I remember thinking back when COVID first hit. I remember thinking back because there were people stuck on cruise ships for like 4 months, 5 months down in Miami because they wouldn't let them off the ship because people had COVID that were confined to quarters. And I remember how small those quarters are and going, I would go flippin' stir crazy. Okay? I would go absolute, forgive my language, ape shit. Okay? I would be like, I would go down to that, I would go down to those people and say, let me off this damn thing right now. I don't fucking care. Get me off this damn boat. Okay? I mean, that was just crap. Okay? Like, they couldn't put them up in hotels. You know, they couldn't let them go on shore and, like, take them to local hotels and let them live in hotels so that they could at least get off the frickin' ships. That's just frickin' stupid, man. I mean, it was just absolutely asinine. So I couldn't imagine, okay, being cooped up on an ark for a year. And it's like, here's the funniest thing. What was the first thing Noah did after he got off the ark? He planted a vineyard, grew some grapes, freaking made some wine, and got drunk. I mean, yeah, he spent a year with his family on an ark, man. I could imagine how just, like, he was done. He was like, I'm done, man. I don't drink and I'd be done at that point. I'd be like, yeah, give me something. This is stupid, okay? So I couldn't imagine, I mean, here again, this is what I'm talking about, common frickin' sense. Could you imagine being stuck on something, okay, the size of a cruise ship, maybe a little bit less, okay, size of a cruise ship, with animals for 365 days, and then add children on top of that? Children that would probably run up and, like, open up the cages and let the animals run free just for the hell of it? Oh, man, that would just, oh, God, I would be like, dude, seriously, hell no. Okay, you would not want kids on that voyage. I guarantee you, okay, that if you ask people who take small children onto cruises, would you ever cruise again with a child that young? And they would say 100%, unequivocally, no. Never again. Because I remember when I got off the boat in Seattle, after I got back from that cruise, I was listening to some of the parents with their children as we were coming off the boat. They're going, I'm never doing this again. Never doing this again. Not for like at least another 20 years. Because they wanted their kids to grow up. To be able to behave themselves. Because their kids were wild animals. Caged in wild animals for 7 freaking days. So you can imagine if parents were not going to take a kid onto a boat for 7 freaking days, okay, ever again, Why would Noah want to take anybody? Why would Noah want to take any child onto a, an ark for a year? Are you stupid? I believe the answer is yes on this, because I mean that is absolutely idiotic thing to say. He wouldn't have had kids? Yeah, because why would he? I'm sure if he was like, so we're not to have any kids until after the flood, and God's probably like, would you want kids running around in an enclosed space? You saw your little ones. Ooh. Yeah. Probably not a good idea. Duh. Okay? So, I don't know why this guy can't use just a little bit of common sense. He's not, okay? He is absolutely trying every single mental gymnastics in the world to try to come up with reasons as to why Noah wouldn't have had kids on an ark. That just doesn't make any sense. Because I don't have any common sense in my body.
Right, and there were other sons and daughters, and we're not mentioning. We don't have no idea how many. Noah might have had 20 kids, right?
But he didn't. Because as I said yesterday when I was reading, okay, yes, Lamech lived 595 years after he became the father of Noah, okay, because he had Noah, okay, at 182, okay, and then he lived another 595 years after he became the father of Noah, and he had other sons and daughters, okay. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. Noah was 500 years old, and Noah became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it doesn't say, and he had other sons and daughters. Did it? No. It just said he had Shem, Ham, and Japheth at 500. Okay? And that's the problem here, is that this guy is essentially reading these genealogies and then going, well, I wonder why. Wonder why it doesn't say. Does it say for everybody else? Again, the flood. If you were to go back and map out every single genealogy, here, let's look at, let me call this up, and let me type in this, okay? Okay. And if you look at okay, if you look at this, you'll see that everybody's, so Adam lived 930. Seth lived 912. Enoch lived 905. Okay. Canaan lived to 910. Mahalalel lived to be 985. Jared lived to be 962. Enoch lived to be 365. Methuselah lived to be 969, and Lamech lived to be 777. And here's the flood, okay? And Shem, okay, lived to be 600 post-flood. And he was 103 when he had Arphaxad, right? Okay? So this is why we're saying Noah was 500 when he begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Shem here, okay, lives to 103 before he has Arphaxad. Okay? Is this starting to make sense now? And this is why I was saying that Shem, okay, lived long enough to know Abraham and at least Isaac and possibly Jacob, okay? And he also would have known Eber, okay? Because Eber was 464. So this is what I'm saying when I'm saying that you have to look at these genealogies, okay, in the context of the Masoretic, in the context of how these genealogies work, okay? Because if you don't, then you'll never understand how these things work.
Or more. But only 3 of them were saved. These are the only 3 that were saved. So I mean, you could then start to speculate about like, well, they were, they abandoned Noah, and they were, that would have made Noah extra sad because they weren't able to come on the ark either.
What the hell are you talking about? Are you talking about imaginary kids that didn't happen? Because that's what it sounds like you're talking about here. Okay? That never happened. The hell is this guy on about?
So that's really all I had to say. I don't know if this is really critiquing creationism other than it's a...
No, it's absolutely critiquing your own intellect. Because this just shows how a lack of common sense makes you idiotic in the extreme, because the amount of mental gymnastics that you have to go through to reach this level of cognitive dissonance is staggering. And I know I say this in almost every single video. It staggers me how just idiotic people have become in terms of common sense. They just cannot look at a story and say, can this be something that I could possibly do to maybe be something better? I mean, oh God, Lord, please help this man. He does not know you. He does not know the Bible. He does not know anything. Okay? It is true what they say. Knowledge does not equal wisdom. Okay? You can be the most knowledgeable person on the planet and still be stupid. Okay? Because wisdom is not the same as knowledge. Okay? And just because you call yourself a doctor, just because maybe you've gone through a doctorate program, and I don't know if he has or not, okay, doesn't mean you're smart. Doesn't mean you're wise. Doesn't mean you know what you know. Especially when you're going to be this dumb when it comes to reading a text. Reading a freaking story. And then going, why would Noah not have had kids? Oh, the flood. Probably because of the flood. Would I want to take kids on a boat? Like, not just not a recreational boat, but like a gigantic boat where kids can get into things and do things and be their rebellious selves, because that's what kids are. Would I want to have to keep track of those kids as we're going about our daily chores, taking care of all the animals that are on this thing? Probably not. Think about it. I mean, do I have to do all the thinking for you? It seems like I do, because it seems like people just, they get these pieces of paper behind their name and they just stop thinking. And then they'll tell other people, oh, I know how to critically think. No, you know how to critically not think. I mean, in terms of Dungeons and Dragons terminology, this guy rolled a 1 on his knowledge check. I mean, absolutely asinine.
It's an interesting, I think, observation about how young earth creationists have little detail to work with. Although there's some weirdly specific things in the Noahic account. Right? There are very specific dates and specific.
Which is it? Which is it? Dude, I have given you numerous specific examples straight from the text. I've literally just been reading the Bible. There's only been a few things that I have been speculative on, and that is, when did Noah start construction on the ark? Because we're not told that explicitly in the text. That's the only part of the story that we're not told anything. And yet here you are saying, young earth creationists do all of this stuff with very vague things. Although there's a lot of weirdly specific things in there. Yeah! Like I told you, the size of the freaking boat. Because that's what's important. I mean, this is next level cognitive dissonance. I mean, this is way beyond any of the cognitive dissonance I have ever seen on this channel. And I've seen a lot. Trust me. Okay? I mean, how many videos have I done now debunking atheists? And I've absolutely owned every single one of them on this point because they do not understand. Like I said, they turn atheist, they forget to think. And I sat there, and I sit here, and I do this stuff. I have people come in and go, you're still wrong. How am I wrong? You're just wrong. That's not an argument. You can already hear the fingers on the keyboards. So dumb.
Specific events, but they seem to be just like little things picked out in order to build a larger narrative and a story.
Oh, gee, almost like, people do in history books where they pick out specifics. Like, do we have every minute of every day of every single battle recorded in history? No. We have the major events that happened. We can infer what happened during those times, okay? By troop movements, how they would have done things, what they were thinking at the time, decisions made by commanders in real time, how that could have affected the outcome of a battle. Like, for instance, when Meade noticed that Sickles was out of position at Gettysburg, and he sent his lieutenant general over to fortify Little Round Top, and they literally arrived 15 minutes before the Confederates arrived, and were able to beat them back from Little Round Top, and then eventually had to fix bayonets because they all ran out of bullets. But, like, here again, we don't have, like, we know certain battles, but, like, a lot of, like, how much of that is devoted, like, you can go to Gettysburg and learn that from a licensed battlefield historian, but how much of that is in a regular textbook? It just says Gettysburg was a turning point for the North. Okay? Over a 3-day period, 65,000 people lost their lives. They had 65,000 casualties. Okay? And there was a disastrous charge by Pickett. There was the last stand on Little Round Top, where they fixed bayonets. That's pretty much it in any single historical textbook, dude. Are you going to now discount every single historical textbook by your own metric because it doesn't give you specifics of certain things? By your logic, now you do. So every single historical textbook that is being taught in any school is automatically invalid thanks to this guy. That's his line of reasoning here. Do you understand this? That is next level cognitive dissonance.
Which then begs the question whether those specific details, all right, how much you can extrapolate from that to a realistic worldview or realistic history of what happened.
Pretty easily, as I've demonstrated in the last 3 videos. What more do you want? The only thing that we don't know is the exact number of years it took Noah to build the ark. We aren't told that. Outside of that, we know what went on because we can trust the details of the stories. Because again, God doesn't lie. The Bible is extremely clear on that. Okay? God cannot lie. In fact, he abhors liars. What does he call the father of lies? Or who does he call the father of lies? Anyone know? Anyone? Bueller? It's in John chapter 8. We'll start in verse 31. So Jesus said to those Jews who had believed him, "If you continue in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants, and have never yet been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who commits sin is the slave of sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son does remain forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are Abraham's descendants, yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. I speak the things which I have seen with the Father. Therefore you also do the things which you heard from your father." They answered and said to him, "Abraham is our father." Jesus said to them, "If you are Abraham's children, do the deeds of Abraham. But as it is, you are seeking to kill me, a man who has told you the truth. When I heard from God, this Abraham did not do." "You are doing the deeds of your father." They said to him, "We were not born of fornication. We have one Father, God." Jesus said to them, "If God were your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and have come from God. For I have not even come on my own initiative, but he sent me. Why is it you do not understand what I am saying? It is because you cannot hear my word. You are of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks the lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I speak the truth, you do not believe me. Which one of you convicts me of sin? If I speak truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of God hears the word of God. For this reason you do not hear them, because you are not of God." The Jews answered and said to him, Do we not say rightly that you are a Samaritan and have a demon?" Jesus answered, "I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. But I do not seek my glory. There is one who seeks and judges. Truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death." The Jews said to him, "Now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died, and the prophets also. And you say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste of death. Surely you are not greater than our father Abraham, who died. The prophets died too. Whom do you make yourself out to be?" Jesus answered, "If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God, and you have not come to know him. But I know him. And if I say I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him and keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." So the Jews said to him, You are not yet 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham?" Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am." Therefore they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. So who is the father of lies again? Oh, that's right, the devil. Okay? God abhors lying. It's part of the 10 Commandments. So if God cannot lie, then this guy must be lying, because he's saying that God is lying to people because he didn't include certain details. He's basically saying that God's lying by omission. Okay? And he's calling us liars because he's saying that we have to infer a whole bunch of things, yet then he stands there and says, but there's a whole bunch of things. He's being hypocritical, because he's standing on the one hand, he's saying there's not enough details in the story, but then on the other hand, he's saying there's hyper-specific details, or weirdly specific details, that don't make any sense. When they do make sense, because I've already read those details in the context of the passages in this video and told you exactly what they said. Because again, you're looking at the genealogies in chapter 5 and you're going, wow, all these people were having kids, and then Noah and his children don't have any kids until after the flood? Well, yeah, they're repopulating the earth. It's exactly what God told them to do in chapter 8 when he sent them out of the ark. And I literally read that passage in the video. I mean, how dumb can you get when you can't even read the whole passage and understand what is being said? I mean, this is just... And then sit there and try to tell us Christians and young earth creationists, you don't understand the story. When you're the one projecting that onto us.
And I guess that's the point of me just bringing this up, is that you can kind of just gloss through and read that passage as like, oh, Noah built this ark, and here's who he had.
And there's your problem right there. You can just kind of gloss through and just kind of read the passage and just kind of go, oh, he built this big boat. No. Read the book. This is why I tell people, watch my videos. Okay? If you made it this far into the video, welcome. Smash that like button. Okay? But this is why I tell people to go back and watch my videos, because they'll watch like 10 minutes of my content, and then they'll sit there and go like, you didn't address anything. Yeah! I have an hour-long freaking video, and I'm literally addressing points and points and points, and people will bring up questions that I literally answer in the videos, and I'll be like, I answered that point in the video, and they're like, no, you didn't. I'm like, yeah. Oh my god. I'm like, yes, I did. I know, because I filmed it. Duh.
Got on board and got off, and here's his 3 kids. And you kind of assume he had 3 children, right? And those 3 children were sons, and they had 3 wives.
Yeah.
But
because how else are they going to repopulate the earth afterwards? Would you like it if they had 100 wives each? Like, what are you talking about, dude? What the hell is this guy on? Seriously.
500 years old, not having any kids.
I mean, there are some people, like my uncle, okay, lived like almost 70 years of his life as a confirmed bachelor. Never had kids. Never needed a wife, never needed a person. He was a confirmed bachelor his whole entire life. Okay? There are women who go their whole lives without marrying and never having kids. Okay? I mean, how is it so hard to understand that like maybe Noah just didn't want to get married until like he was like say 400 or 450, you know? Like, I mean, this is the idiocy on display here, okay? When you're taking your modern day thinking and trying to apply it, and you don't even realize that there are people out there that can live lives, okay? Because there's like Buddhist monks that live in monasteries their whole lives, never get married, never have sex, never do anything. And they'll live for 100 years, okay? How is it so far of a stretch for a man to live most of his life with no wife and no kids? It happens, you absolute freaking maroon. And to sit there and to think that you're smarter than people like me is insulting. And it is insulting to you, the person sitting behind the screen there. It should be insulting to you two. To think that this guy knows more than you when you can sit there and listen to me and go, how in the hell can a guy with no PhD, okay, and a basic understanding of the Bible, who's not a pastor, not a Bible scholar, I'm not Wes Huff, I'm not Nate Sala, okay, I'm just a guy doing apologetics, and how is it that I can own a guy like this so hard on basic level understanding of a story and basic human existence? How sheltered does this guy have to be to not understand that there are people out there that never get married, that never have kids, and can be perfectly happy? Now, my uncle, granted, okay, when he died, he was all alone. And in one of the last phone calls that he had with my mom about a year before he died, Okay? That was when he kind of broke down and said, I wish I could have gotten married. And my mom just sat there and went, why didn't you? That was all she said to him. Why didn't you get married? Why was it that you had to act like this and think it was okay? And put her parents, my grandparents, their parents, through shame, through hell, through everything, because you kept wanting to pursue your business, you kept wanting to pursue your own interests, and you refused to put anybody else above that. And that's why you're alone. That's why you're 68, 69, and dying alone. Because you never took the time to go out, meet people, and do things. But people can live that way and still be happy. Okay? I've known plenty of people who have been bachelors most of their lives. And then they get married and they have fun and they have some children and they go out and they do things and they're great. Not everybody has to get married at the age of 20. Not everybody has to get married at the age of 100 and have kids. Okay? Noah decided to wait 500 years to have kids. It's okay. Maybe he wanted to go out and see the world before he had kids, before he had to settle down. How do you know what was going through Noah's mind? You don't, and that's the point. This guy is presuming to know what Noah was thinking, because he's taking his own thoughts of what he would do and projecting it onto Noah. That is called eisegesis. And so he's thinking in his mind, well, I knew I wanted to get married at 20 years old, and so I made sure I got married at 20 years old. Damn it. So how dare Noah wait 500 years to get married? How dare he? And have kids? Who the fuck are you to tell Noah what to do? I mean, seriously, who are you? Who are you to tell anyone anything in their life when you're that arrogant to think that you can know what somebody was thinking 30 or 40, 400 years ago? Okay? That is absolutely asinine. Are you flippin' stupid? Yes. The answer is yes.
100 years, not having any additional kids, their husbands having wives for 100 years and not having any children.
You're assuming his kids got married right out of the womb. I mean, are you dumb? Why would his kids be getting married right out of the womb? He had the kids at 500. You absolute freaking moron. Again. What the hell are you talking about? What is this? What am I watching here? What the hell? Did your kids get married, if you had any? Because I doubt you did at this point. And if you did, I feel sorry for them because, man, you obviously didn't know how to raise kids. Did they get married right out of the womb? Did you have their wives picked out for them? And did they just grew up together? Are you dumb? What the hell is this? How do you know when his kids got married? You don't know that because the Bible doesn't say. And they sure as hell didn't get married when they just came out of the womb. Are you dumb? This is next level cognitive dissonance. This is next level. This is beyond anything we've covered at this point on this channel. I have no problem saying that. This is next level cognitive dissonance right here. Okay? Next level cognitive dissonance. And the amount of mental gymnastics that you have to go through to think that Noah's kids were married straight out of the womb is absolutely asinine. Okay? In the extreme. Like, full stop, no problem saying that because this guy has no business telling anyone anything ever. And you should not believe a single word that comes out of this man's mouth because he does not know how to read a story. And then try to think, okay, so if Noah had sons at 500, they probably would have been at least 20 or 30 before they had wives. Okay, at least. So you're going to tell me that for probably 70 to 80 years, they didn't have sex? But couples have sex all the time and they don't necessarily get pregnant all the time. Okay? You can have sex in marriage and not get pregnant. Okay? You don't have to have a child every time you procreate or every time you have sex. You don't have to procreate. Okay? And it doesn't happen all the time. This is the level of cognitive dissonance we're at now. I mean, I mean, on this channel, it's like we started here with cognitive dissonance, and then we had like Christy Burke, and then we had like Deconversion Zone, and then we've had like Flying Spaghetti Auditor, and now we're like way up here. We're like way beyond anything we've ever covered before. I mean, like the level of cognitive dissonance right now is just like off the chart. Okay? This is absolutely stupid. I mean, I can't believe that this guy thinks that he's a doctor of anything. Literally. I mean, this is just next level idiocy. I mean, it is just stupid to think that anyone would take this guy seriously at all. Because if you can't read a story and go, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and then look at chapter 11, okay, and go, okay, chapter 11, verse 10. Shem was 100 years old and became the father of Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. Okay. So, Shem, Ham, and Japheth were born at around about 500 years old. And as I said yesterday, okay, in 11 verse 10, these are the records of the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and became the father of Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. Now, it does say, okay, in 21, chapter 10, verse 21, says, also to Shem, the father of the children of Eber, and to the older brother of Japheth, children were born. The sons of Shem were Elam and Asher, and Arpachshad, and Lud, and Aram. And then it goes on to talk about, who some of the different people were, who were some of the different, sons of some of the different, of Ham, or Shem. So, it sounds like Arpachshad was maybe not the firstborn, or if he was the firstborn, that was 2 years after the flood. So, for 102 years, okay, nothing happened. And then they have children, okay? And again, like I said before, when your lifespan is that long, I'm sure a year doesn't feel like a long time to you, okay? And I've noticed, I don't know about anybody else, but I've noticed that as I've gotten older, okay, time has sped way the fuck up, okay? It seems like years are speeding by right now, okay? The only time I ever felt the years speed by this fast was when I was in high school. When I was a senior in high school, I remember walking through the doors, I remember doing a few things, and then I walked out the doors as a graduate. Okay, my senior year was like lightning, okay? And it seems like that's what the years feel like. I can't believe it's freaking May right now as I'm filming this. Okay, it feels like yesterday I was just here in Kansas for Christmas. And it feels like 2 hours ago my girlfriend came and visited me in February, okay? I mean, it's insane how fast the months are going by, okay? So I could imagine that if the people were maturing a lot slower then, Okay? 500 years probably didn't seem like a long time. 100 years, I mean, most people, if you look, yeah, a few people were having kids at 30, but like some of them are having kids at 100 or 150. So that was probably the norm. You got born, you lived your life for a while, you went out and did some things, and then you found a wife and settled down and started having kids at 100 to 150. Some people did it sooner, some people did it later. Other people, it's like, hey, it's people do it. So for Noah, being 500 years old before he fathered somebody, and then to bring up the asinine statement of Abraham was worried about his wife being 100 years old post-flood, when lifespans reduced drastically after Peleg. Yeah, I could understand that. But that's not Noah. Because Noah was born pre-flood. Not post-flood. So were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So that begs the question. Did you even read the Bible, son? Because obviously you didn't read it. You just cherry-picked verses, okay? You kind of glossed over, in your own words, you glossed over the story. You picked out verses, and then you nitpicked and cherry-picked your own thoughts into those verses. Okay? And you did it to the point where you have now convinced yourself that you're smarter than people like me because you've come up with a few questions that supposedly no one can answer, even though I've answered every single point. Except like one, and that was, when did he start building the ark? And to sit there and say that Noah's sons had wives for 100 years when they were born at 100 years before the flood is stupid. Is next level idiocy.
I mean, you could say they had miscarriages, or they had children that died, or or they all abandoned Noah and didn't enter the ark. So we're
no, the Bible doesn't say that at all, because the Bible would have told us about that kind of stuff. Okay, we're told he had 3 sons. Now, and the funny thing is that if you read again the post-flood genealogies, you'll see that they had multiple children. Okay? And then it says that in chapter 10. And then in chapter 11, starting in verse 10, okay, it literally starts, okay, from Shem, and it starts going down the thing of, okay, he had Arpachshad at this age, and then had other sons and daughters. He had, Arpachshad had Eber. Eber had other sons and daughters. Eber had Peleg, and Peleg had and then had other sons and daughters. And Peleg had this kid, and this kid had other sons and then went on to have other sons and daughters. This kid had other sons and daughters. So to sit there and think that because the Bible didn't record that Noah didn't have other sons and daughters must mean that he had other sons and daughters. Why would it? Wouldn't you think that God would have felt that important to include? That Noah was sitting on the ark with a broken heart because all of his kids died, except for 3? Especially when it says that you and your household, and everywhere else it says you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives, colloquially meaning the household. It doesn't say they had servants, it doesn't say they had anything else, just says these are the 8 people that were on the ark. Okay? This is the level of cognitive dissonance on display here. That this guy is making up scenarios in his head and eisegeting into the text, attempting to try to rationalize how he is better than creationists because he can critically think when he's not thinking at all. Because he's not using a shred of common sense at all. He's just making up scenarios in his head and then throwing shit against the wall and hoping it sticks.
Left with so little detail. right?
No, we're not. The only detail that we're not told, the only detail that we're not told is when God told Noah to build the ark. How long did it take him to build it? That's it. We're not told that. Outside of that, everything is there. And I've read it multiple times at this point, so I'm not going to bore you by reading it again because we're already getting too long, okay? But I'm sick and tired of this guy making the same damn argument, okay? Because now he's talking in circles, okay? And he's being a hypocrite while he's doing it.
Really about Noah, such that he becomes a character that is hard to identify with, right? From
How is he hard to identify with? He was a father. He was saving his children by putting them on the ark. Wouldn't you do that? If God came down to you today and said, hey, I need you to build an ark, okay? Because I'm going to flood the world. Would you not do anything in your power to save your children if you have any? I know I would. I would try to save my whole family. I would ask God, who do you want me to bring? Okay? Can I bring my parents? Can I bring these? Can I bring those? Can I bring this? Can I bring news? Can I do this? Can I do that? I mean, you're an absolute idiot if you can't understand Noah from the text. You're stupid.
From our modern perspective, if in fact.
And there you go. From our modern perspective. This is the problem. From your modern perspective, Joel, you have no idea what the story actually says because you're reading it through your own modern perspective. And you can't fathom how a man like Noah couldn't have children when there are plenty of examples of people living their life, not having children, all around the world. Today. I mean, here again, I could point to a lot of examples, okay, and I already have in this video. And the mere fact that you're going to sit there in the US of A and think that you're better than everybody else because you think you figured out the story of Noah's Ark and how dumb it is, okay, just proves how ignorant you truly are. How much of an ignoramus you truly are. Because you have no clue how other cultures live. You have no clue how anybody on this earth lives. You have no clue what's going on this earth at all. Right now. And so to think that you could know what Noah was thinking 4,400 years ago is absolutely stupid. And to sit there and try to tell Christians, well, you can't identify with Noah through a modern perspective. Duh! How do you think we read the Bible? You freaking maroon. Come on. Think about it. Think. Really think. Let it marinate up there for a minute. Think about it. My God, this guy's an idiot.
In fact, he lived that long. Anyway, just...
All right, well, we're done. Yeah, screw this guy. I don't know that I'm going to critique another one of his videos because I don't know if I can stand the idiocy. Okay, I really don't. Not unless the Holy Spirit tells me to, because, I mean, honestly, I'm done with this guy. This guy has no clue what the Bible says. He has no clue what is going on in the Bible. He has no clue trying to tell anybody on earth what the Bible says. Because by his own metric, we have to discard every single textbook that's out there because it's not detailed enough. Okay? By his own metric. Okay? When he stands there and says that this historical text doesn't include specific details that he wants, we should throw it out, then we have to throw out every single historical textbook ever written. Every single one of them. Because they don't include enough details. That's his own metric. That's the level of cognitive dissonance on display. Smash that like button. Hit subscribe. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this short series. And as we say, we will see you on the next one.